Hello, and welcome to another episode of Storytime Pitches. I'm Kurt.
I'm Josh. How's it going, guys?
All right, we're going to start this new episode off with a fresh idea.
Okay.
It's going to be fresh for you guys, but this is actually one that I've been thinking about quite a bit for quite a few years.
Okay, I'm intrigued already.
About the last episode, I actually had a lot of fun. I think it was great, and actually, I still kind of toss that idea around in my head still. So
Yeah.
I do hope that we can actually do another episode and maybe either continue with that one or do a different one. So I hope that the community, not only for us, but for their community, maybe reaches out and gives us some more ideas.
Yeah, for sure. It was a lot of fun, having those guys on and, of course, helping them with their 100th episode. So thanks for checking it out, guys.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into this. So I imagine this is probably going to be a comic book,
Okay.
but maybe eventually a movie. I mean, I guess that's kind of the hopes of the channel is eventually one of these will actually be made into either one.
Yeah.
But
Well, a comic would be pretty cool, too, because it doesn't seem as like it'd be as far of a feat to jump, I guess.
yeah, they're a little bit more plausible to, kind of get started, I guess. All right. Okay, so with this idea, I actually imagine this character, the main character, would actually fit into the Marvel universe. And I know that you're a big fan of Marvel, and
Yeah, for sure.
pretty big fan of Marvel, so it's just this has been stewing for me for a long time. And actually, I've been wanting to tell you about this idea, but I've kind of kept it to myself just because I know that you were going to be excited about something Marvel related.
Oh, yeah. Well, any superhero or comic kind of stuff.
Yep. All right, so I'll kind of paint a picture here, and then we can kind of get into the story a little bit. So this is kind of my imagining of what the first comic would actually look like. So the first beginning of the first comic. So
Okay, so number one.
So we started off with a nightclub. I imagine a city kind of California, maybe New York.
It's a bigger city.
Yeah, bigger city, that kind of stuff. And this is a big venue. This is a massive venue. So you can just imagine a big, huge warehouse full of just hundreds and hundreds of people there to see a DJ. Okay?
Okay.
So the main character actually is the DJ. He's well established. He's been doing music for quite a few years now. So as the party's going on, he's talking to the crowd and he's telling everybody hey, thank you guys for coming out. This is one of the biggest concerts that I've had, that kind of thing. So after everything kind of dies down, he ends up shutting off everything. Everybody's starting to leave. Obviously he's the DJ, so he's got girls with him, and he goes backstage and he's hey, we're going to take this party and we're going to go back to my place and we're going to, just rage the entire night and stuff like that. So
I bet they are.
yeah, why wouldn't you? So he gets back to his house and everybody's starting to pop bottles. Everybody's drinking. Everybody's having a good time. He's in there talking to some girls, and you hear a knock at the door. So obviously just one of these random people go over and grab the door, and they're oh, hey, what are you doing here? And it's this delivery guy standing there, and he's kind of just way off put because he's I have a package for DJ Mad. They're okay. So they bring in this huge package into his house, and finally some people are yelling at the main guy to come over, and he's hey, this guy is dropping this package off and stuff. And he's oh, okay, cool. Like, just bring it in my office and, something like that. And so it was kind of like weird that this guy just drops his package off in like the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So he gets it in there and he sets it on the table and he opens it up and it's this like old vintage record player. He's like, what the heck? So, and it looks like old DJ equipment kind of thing, like, nothing really fancy. He's just like, okay, like, whatever. And he kind of just like throws it on the ground and.
Okay, so it kind of takes place like present day, and then he gets a bunch of like old school equipment.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting though because like a lot of electronic artists and stuff like that now are kind of going back to classic equipment like that because it gives them a very specific sound, analog sound that is really hard to like achieve through anything digital nowadays. So it's kind of a cool idea.
Oh. Yeah, you see, I didn't know that, like, but I guess that, I mean, it really does kind of add to it, like, eventually.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, the party goes on and, stuff like that. So in the morning, he's kind of like kicking, some girls out. This is a little bit more of like a mature comic. So, I mean, it's not like overly mature, but I mean, you could tell that he's, young guy in his prime, top of the world kind of thing.
Yeah.
So eventually, like, he gets back into his studio there and he's kind of just going through the box again. So he pulls it out and he sets it on the table and like he actually goes over and plugs it in. And he's like kind of like rifling through some other stuff and he finds a letter. And the letter's actually from his dad, and his dad says like, hey, I know like I haven't been in your life as much as I'd like to, but I hope that this kind of like explains some of the reason why I left and, like why I haven't been around.
Okay.
I mean, kind of like you kind of get the gist that his dad probably hasn't really been there for him quite at all. So he kind of goes through the box again, like he finds like these records sitting in the bottom of it, and they're like in these like hard plastic sleeves and stuff like that. And he thought that was kind of weird for the time because normally records are in like a, just a cheap little sleeve,
The cardboard
kind of thing. Yeah, cardboard sleeve. So he pulls one out and he notices that the records are kind of like weird looking. He's like, okay, so he sets it on, the record player, and he takes out these like old headphones, and they're kind of like those cheap plasticky headphones that you used to see in like school.
Yeah.
Like back
I
in
could
the
imagine
day.
him like looking around at like, where do I plug in my, lightning cable? Like, oh, I guess I gotta use these old headphones.
Yep. So he like sits over there and like, he finally finds the button to put him in. So he plugs it in. He hits play and like he turns it on and then like he drops the needle. And it's just like as soon as he drops the needle onto the record, like he just warps like instantly to this entire other universe, like this entire other world,
Okay.
basically.
All right. Sounds promising so far. I'm interested.
So like as like when he gets there, like obviously like he's like freaking out and he's like standing in a field looking at an ocean and like seeing all this like greenery and trees and stuff like that, and like there's basically like nothing around except for animals and stuff like that. He's like freaking out because he's like, what the heck? Like, so he immediately takes off his headphones, and like as soon as he does, like he just gets barraged with all this like sound. He's like, what the heck? And like he can't hear anything, and it's kind of like pounding against his eardrum.
Mm-hmm.
And so he immediately puts the headphones back on, and like everything just goes clear again. He eventually figures out that these worlds are music based. So what we hear in our world, our ears are, kind of, they're set to our world. But
Okay. So like different frequencies and stuff.
right. So he needs like something to like basically filter the the noise so he
Okay.
can hear in those
So it's
worlds.
almost like the oxygen, that we need to breathe here, and then on other planets and stuff, we don't necessarily have that. So it's kind of like he needs this to survive on these different planets.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Or
So,
universes or whatever.
I mean, like, it is both. We'll kind of get into that a little bit later. There's a
Okay.
lot to that. I might actually need your help figuring out some of that.
Okay.
So from there, he basically takes the headphones out, and he notices that the headphones are still working. Like they still filter the sound for him. So he's like he wraps up the cord. He's just like kind of holding onto the cord. And so he just starts like walking around, and he kind of like walks up to the edge of the forest, and he's like yelling to see if anybody's around. Really, he doesn't see anybody, but he eventually like starts to hear this like noise. There's like a commotion going on in these like woods. He's like freaking out, so like it's like coming towards him. He kind of like turns and each like trips, looks back, and there's this like weird looking tiny little animal that like pops out of the forest.
Okay, like a little alien guy.
Yeah, like if I had to like give a description of him, he would probably look like a platypus in a way,
Okay.
like an odd colored platypus, but not quite a platypus. I mean, you have to kind of roll with me on like
Use your
this is
imagination.
it's a foreign creature. Like
It's an
he kind
alien.
of just yeah. So he's like staring at him like on the ground, and like he's kind of like his level with him. This little animal like turns and like looks at him, and he's like freaking out, and this little animal like turns, screams something, but as he screams, like the trees that were like directly in front of him like crack and fall down.
Oh wow.
Right, so I mean, like this was an extremely powerful scream here
Okay.
in his head. Like, I mean, you have to think DJ Mad actually, I mean, he is a DJ, so anything that's music based or sound based, it obviously intrigues him. So like he's
Yeah.
seeing like this power come from a noise. At the time he sees this, he isn't really thinking about like the power that comes from it, but more or less the sound of what this animal has created. So he instantly like, goes into his pocket and like stands there and like hits record on his phone to record the sound. He's like, obviously still kind of like backing up towards where the record player is, and he eventually gets back. He hits stop, and like he pulls the needle off of the record, and it warps him right back to his house.
Okay, well, if the animal makes the noise, like obviously he wouldn't be expecting that at first. So it might be kind of clever if after it happens, because he's all scared that he's on a different world and there's aliens and stuff like that. And then of course this thing makes this sound and cracks all the trees and stuff. So yeah, he's intrigued, but it might be kind of interesting if he kind of has to follow it around, like he has his phone and he's ready to record it, but he has to follow it around for a while and like kind of see where it lives and everything until it gets to the point where it needs to make this noise again and he can actually record it.
Oh, okay. So he actually comes back to the world again.
Well, no, like I think like he's sitting there laying on the ground. Well, he's laying on the ground after, he trips after he was running, and then this thing turned around, or he like looks up and this thing's like right in his face, because I imagine it's pretty small, like a gerbil or something, and then it turns around and screams, makes this noise, and he doesn't know what to do. He's just like scared, but then at the same time he's super intrigued. So this animal runs off, and then he's thinking to himself like, "Wow, I've never heard a sound like that. That was like the most interesting thing I've ever heard." And like, look at the damage it did. Like, I got to try to record this. So he pulls out his phone, hits the record button, and like runs and starts chasing after this thing to try to get it to make the noise again.
Oh, okay.
So maybe it kind of builds like a little like camaraderie right there, like typical stories do, where they're not really friends at first or something, but he has to like kind of follow him to record the sound again and kind of see a little bit more of this world that he's in at the same time.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then
Kind of like
once he gets it recorded, he can go back.
yeah, like I don't know. Just as you were saying that, it kind of reminded me of Pokemon in a way, like Ash, like going after some Pokemon.
Yeah, like he's all scared at first, and then it's like, wow, this is awesome. Like I gotta prove that I was here, you know?
Right. All right. Yeah, I like that. Actually, I really like that. Yeah. So I mean, like, let's say, like, yeah, let's go with that. Like, he eventually does finally get after this like little creature, and I don't know. Let's say like maybe something happens, like another creature kind of like steps in, kind of its way, and like it does this like noise again. He finally actually does get the recording. So obviously he's not going to hang around in this world too much because he's like, I don't know where the hell I'm at. I don't know what I'm dealing with, that kind of thing. So he goes back to the record player
Yeah.
and, eventually goes back to, his world. I just like imagine him like just really, really excited about like what the hell he just found. But at the same time, like he has this noise that in his head is like, I'm going to use this as a new song kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
So this is kind of like, the trial and error of like most superheroes, kind of like where they try out this new thing. So
Yeah.
he ends up going in, he takes the recording, he breaks it down to like it's, just that noise. He goes and hits play on his speakers, and I mean, like, this noise goes through its speakers and like blows up pretty much like everything in his room.
Okay.
And so he just like lost like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment because he just played this through like, in an open room kind of thing.
Yeah, so he needs to like tweak it a little bit and make it so the frequencies actually can be played and you hear the sound, but it doesn't do the damage.
Right. And so this is kind of like the, adventure of trying to like figure out the mechanics of how to harness this sound. So, I mean, he's blowing through like speakers and speakers, and eventually he finally lands at like this custom shop, and he's talking to this like older guy, and he's just like, look, I need to find a speaker that can withstand like almost like a bulletproof speaker, pretty much like something
Yeah.
that's indestructible. And so he's waiting around, and eventually, finally, like, this guy calls him, and he's like, "Look, I shipped it. Like, this is a one of a kind speaker. It's extremely expensive, but I think this might work. And if it doesn't, like, hit me back up, and we're gonna try to really figure this out." But eventually, when he does get the speaker, it's this large, like, probably, I mean, like, I would say probably about the size of Captain America's, like, shield.
Oh, wow.
So it's a really big speaker, but it's like super futuristic, and so eventually he sets it all up, and trial again. He sets it in, he plugs it up, and he eventually like has this thing sitting out in the yard with his DJ equipment and stuff, and like he hits the button, and like sure enough, this speaker doesn't blow up, but the sound travels through it, and it like does the exact same thing. It like goes through this forest that's in his backyard, and actually like just breaks down all these like trees in front of him. So then, like, as he's sitting out there, he's kind of playing with like the volume and stuff, and he finally gets it down to where he can use like a smaller volume to like not get it to like go as far. So the higher it's up, the more powerful it is.
Yeah.
So with that, he's kind of figured out like what he needs to play this music. Now he's got to figure out how to redo the vinyl, the record table that he was sent. And so once again, he kind of futurizes the vinyl table. my imagining of him is that he needs this to walk around. Like, he obviously doesn't want to leave it just sitting in the middle of a field kind of thing.
Yeah. So he needs like a portable version.
Yeah. So I was thinking, like, have you ever seen those, like, stand-up vinyls?
Yeah.
Like record players?
Yeah.
So kind of like that, but like a backpack.
Okay.
Kind of slimline, really nice, but like it has like a protective barrier that he keeps on him. So he keeps that vinyl player with him at all times. The other thing that I imagine him is he has like a mixing table, kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh in a way. I don't know if you remember Yu-Gi-Oh.
Not too much. I never really got into that.
So they have these like tables that are actually like on their arms, and they're like slimline kind of thing, but they put like their cards into it. So kind of the same sort of idea, but it's like all of his DJ equipment that he needs to mix music and stuff like that.
Okay.
He carries the actual like speaker with him. So the next time that he actually goes to that other world, he actually has the speaker with him.
So he can use it as like a defense mechanism.
Right. Because he notices that these creatures obviously use this noise to, fend off other creatures, so why not do the same?
Okay.
So as, and that's kind of like the beginnings of, like where we're going to go with like the first book, or, like the first couple comics are going to kind of just be that, like,
lay the groundwork.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
I guess, like, if I had to, like, break him down, I kind of think of the character as, like, the Doctor Strange, but of music. And he is African-American. He's probably about 35, 35 in that age range. So.
That's funny you say that. I kind of imagined him like a Donald Glover type.
Yeah, actually, in a way, yeah. Like, I kind of wanted him, like, to have like that short hair, not like bald, but like, just short, and then like really clean cut.
Yeah, or even like how they do like the mohawks now, like all the football players and stuff.
Oh yeah,
like short on the sides, a little bit more on the top.
I don't know, that's kind of like, that's kind of like the basis of what this is, and I guess if I could say anything else, like, as you would read the comic book, he, like with his adventures into this world, he does acquire more sounds that have different abilities.
Okay.
So, like one is obviously like, something that he can defend himself with, but others have more of like a hypnosis effects, I would say that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so I kind of want it to be like really mysterious in a way, like these sounds that he acquires.
Yeah, they have like different abilities and stuff, and I guess that makes sense, because even when you think about like anything that's fighting or anything, they're gonna grunt or something, and that sound that they make releases some kind of power, I guess. So I guess that makes sense that you could definitely use that, especially if he's traveling to all kinds of different worlds and universes. He could pick up all kinds of cool stuff.
Yep.
Okay. Is that pretty much your whole spiel?
Yeah.
Because I got a lot.
Like, that's quite a bit of, like, the basis of, like, who he is. Obviously, I have a lot more written down of the actual, like, history of... Because the story actually plays with his dad and his partner actually created the first world. So they are the ones that actually created the first world that they found. And this is
they
the reason
created
why
it, or they visited it?
They created it. And
so not only do the records transport you, but they create new universes or new worlds?
Right.
Is that like something that we get into later, or?
Yeah, I'd say like, I'm trying to I'm thinking about doing like maybe a 3-part or 4-part to this idea. So we can kind of get into that maybe like the next maybe the next one.
Okay.
But I kind of just wanted to like throw the idea out there and see what you thought, or if you have any other ideas.
All right, I'm gonna throw it in the blender real quick and throw it right back at you. So, when you say it's like a Marvel type superhero, I imagine it has to have a pretty big arc and a reason for existing in the first place. I think all of that is like really has a lot of potential, and then just a couple like more things that we can add. So I imagine it like, his dad was like somebody like a really big popular musician in like the late 70s kind of thing. The disco era and all that kind of stuff, especially with this older analog equipment. And let's say, his dad kind of started falling off a little bit, and, of being a famous, musician at that point, kind of started falling off, because maybe he wasn't the one that was like actually singing up front, but he was a lot of the one that was writing the music and the beats and all that behind all the popular people that we know from the late 70s, early 80s. So maybe he has a baby, and, when the kid's, 3 or 4 years old, he disappears under mysterious circumstances. And of course, everybody just thinks that he left and all that. So he grows up thinking that his dad abandoned him and everything. But he has the music gene as well. So he makes more popular music, what we listen to now, electronic and stuff like that. So he ends up being this huge, like Skrillex type DJ. And obviously he's playing these huge arenas and everything. And he hasn't really put out anything good in a couple years that people are gravitating towards. Like usually when he plays these shows, they want him to play his older stuff because the new stuff is kind of experimental. Like nobody really knows what it is. They just don't get it. They love his hits. And I could see him kind of getting pressure from a record company saying like, hey, like, where's the new album? We need something. Give us a single. We need something because, you're falling off and we're going to have to drop you from the label if we don't get something soon. So he's getting pressure from all these different ways, but he's still trying to live his, rock star lifestyle, because he's a DJ, but he's an original artist at the same time because he's obviously making this music at the same time. So yeah, it would be awesome if he goes back to the hotel, the package shows up, or his room, his apartment or whatever, and he gets the package and all that. Now, it would be cool if everything that you said plays out exactly that way. Now, when he gets to this other world, he follows this little creature and everything after he hears the sound, wants to record it. And of course, this ginormous, like, monster alien comes out of nowhere and tries to kill this guy. His name, DJ Mad is his name?
Yep.
Like M-A-D or M-A-D-D or what?
M-A-D-D.
Okay. So this alien tries to kill DJ Mad, and the little guy that he was following around, the little alien, he wanted nothing to do with him. Like, he followed him back to his house or whatever, the place that he was staying, and like realized that he was completely alone and everything. So he kind of felt bad for the little guy. And the little guy just wanted to get rid of DJ Mad, like, stop following me kind of thing. But eventually DJ Mad gets the hint, realizes he's probably not going to get the sound. So he like leaves, and this big old alien comes and tries to attack him, like ginormous, like 16-foot tall alien, and, smacks him around a couple times. And then right when this thing's about to crush him, the little alien comes back out and like screams and makes the noise at him, and like doesn't really kill the alien, but he, knocks him down and then gets up and scurries away. And then the little guy like turns back to him and then runs back to his little hole or wherever he lives. And then DJ Mad's like freaking out, grabs his phone, like he got it recorded. And he's like, all right, I got to get out of here because obviously this place is super dangerous. So as he's leaving, he notices like a castle or something weird in the distance. And he can see like people like riding like alien type horses like towards their area because they saw something happen up in the woods and they're trying to get up there. And as this is happening, he's like, whatever, I'm getting out of here. So he goes and takes the needle off the record and comes back to our world. And then, yeah, like he goes through all the phases of trying to figure out how to incorporate this noise into his music without destroying people's ears. because it's obviously something so unique that nobody's ever heard a noise like that before. So using that as like the drop in his next song is going to be like the next level of music. Like there's nothing out there that's ever sounded like this before. So this is what's going to put him back in the zone, and make his next record a hit. So yeah, he goes through all the phases of trying to do that, destroys everything. But it'd be kind of cool if instead of necessarily ordering that speaker, if he went to like his dad's old workshop, like he refused to go to this place the entire time. Like he didn't want any help from his dad or anything because he felt like he had abandoned him. And he goes to like his dad's old workshop and he's like, well, if none of these modern speakers are going to work with this, maybe there's something in that old warehouse that will work with it. So I imagine him going there and of course finding this setup that his dad was using to make these sounds into his music at the time. So he's basically doing what his dad was doing on more of a electronic EDM kind of level, so right. It's a full circle thing. So I imagine him, since he's so smart, like kind of reverse engineering these speakers. So taking these speakers apart and building more portable, compact versions of it that he can actually travel around. Because I think to him, it's like a Tony Stark thing at first. It's like a greed kind of fame thing going to his head. Like, I'm going to go out and get all these noises from all these different worlds and be, the next big thing, because right now I'm floating here with all these other musicians and I need to be the one that everybody talks about. Like, so I imagine him at first doing all that just for that purpose, to become that next music icon. And in doing so, like realizing that his dad might have not necessarily left him, that his dad might have got left on one of these worlds. And
right.
I like your idea of like that his dad built this with a partner and maybe something happened when they were on a world that they decided to have a power struggle and one of them went one way, and thought, I'm nobody on this planet, on planet Earth, so I can be a king on one of these other worlds.
Right.
And maybe he owns that castle, so the first world he goes to ends up being the bad world.
That's so crazy that, like, you would just lay that out, and, so many of those ideas are actually, like, things that I've actually had, like, written down for this idea. Like,
well, that's
crazy.
Why we do this podcast, because we think alike.
Like, wow, that is really, like, kind of, like, just eerie, scary that you would say pretty much just about everything that, like, I've already written down. So, but yeah, like, I think that's, like, exactly pretty much the way it is. Like, I think, maybe he does come out with a new hit with that first sound, and this is something like
everybody's going crazy for.
Yeah, everybody's like bumping in their cars, pretty much, and because it has this like mysterious effect that people don't know about, but like the bass that comes from it, like actually like, it rattles you in a different way. Like it goes through you in a different way.
Yeah.
And
I think that makes sense. You go to concerts and you can feel it in your chest when the bass drums are going and stuff. So yeah, I don't see why that would be any different.
Right. And so like, obviously this, this song kind of takes the world by storm, and it kind of puts them right back up on the charts again. And so with that fame and that fame from this, he's just like, all right, look, I have all this equipment, like I've done everything, I can use this, and I need to go back to that world and get more, because this is what's kind of keeping me on the top charts right now. So
yeah, so he's being egotistical and typical superhero kind of stuff before they realize that they have a responsibility.
Right. And I have written down like the first like big mistake I would like him to do is actually record another animal, and This thing has a really, really like deep tone to it. Man, I don't know how you would explain it. Like when I said like has like this psychedelic,
Like a trance or
wavelength,
hypnosis.
right? Basically, like he records it. In doing so, he had to fight this thing to like get this thing to use the noise. But it does kind of mess him up because he stumbled around like in this forest for like a long, long time trying to like find his way out. He eventually gets back and uses this to make another song, but instead of like releasing it, he decides like on his next like concert he's gonna play this song, and in doing so he basically turns like the entire venue into like these droned out crazy zombie like people.
I could imagine him just like up there, like bobbing his head and stuff, and then kind of looking up and like, why is nobody moving?
Right. And he just like ruins the entire thing. I mean, like everybody's like droned out and just kind of like standing there, like just quiet. He's looking around like, what the heck did I just do? Like, what the hell? And pretty much at that moment, he has to like basically leave the venue and go back to this world and figure out a way to get these people out of this trance. And
Okay.
that kind of like leads into kind of like the next main character that you would basically see. She's a girl that actually lives in this world. Just by chance, when he warps because he's at a concert in not his house, he doesn't warp to the forest that he's used to. He warps to another part of the world. So like geographically, when wherever he's at in our world is going to change where he ends up in their world, basically.
Yeah.
But he ends up like meeting this, this girl and trying to like explain to her what's going on. And he eventually shows her like the sound and the video of like what happened. And, in her language, she kind of like talks to the elders of her village, and they actually like come up with a solution on like what he needs to do to get them back to normal.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so he eventually becomes really good friends with this girl, and just over time he eventually like learns their language. Obviously he's a pretty smart guy, so coming across language is probably a little bit easier for him.
Yeah, I can see that. I kind of imagine it like every issue of this comic is kind of a different world that he's visiting to get different sounds. So it's a different adventure on every one of these worlds that he has to go through to achieve this recording, that he can use in his music. So I imagine kind of like the first issue of the comic is everything that we kind of just set up, really brief form of it. And kind of the cliffhanger is that maybe his dad didn't leave him, that his dad might actually be missing on one of these worlds. And we just kind of like leave it at that. And then we go back, issue 2, we start at the fact that he's egotistical and wants to keep up in the music business and everything. So we start with that, and he's almost like arming himself through all these issues of comics that we're going to do, where he's getting different armor, weapons type thing. Like he can almost weaponize some of these sounds. So he hears something on one world that he can use like a sound blast to push things away. And then he can also use that in his music and stuff. So he builds these things as he goes. But I imagine, that there's this ultimate bad guy that maybe something happens on the first world that he tries to get out of there so fast that he ends up like stepping on part of the equipment and like part of it breaks right there, but he's able to lift the needle off and go back to his world. And then these like guys on these alien horses, these knights or whatever come up, and or maybe they're like alien knights basically, but they work for like his dad's ex-best friend who's now the king and like brought all these people together kind of thing. So they take back this equipment to him, but we wouldn't find this out till like way later on in the comics. Like I imagine, like obviously there's gonna be, conflict, but I think we kind of make the readers think that the conflict is more the music industry and just that it's all interesting that all these sounds and how he's doing this and the adventures that he goes on. But then we realize that there is a bigger bad guy who has been left on this planet because his dad and him got in a fight, and his dad is like, fine, like, you'll never leave this planet, and then does something to automatically trigger the needle coming off of the record, and just like basically strands him on this planet with this guy and sends all the equipment back to Earth. But he could plan it all out, like where it was going to be delivered on a specific day and everything to his son.
Right.
But I mean, we could get into that like way later, but that would be pretty cool if he kind of figured out how to reverse engineer this piece of equipment that DJ Mad left behind to at least follow him. You know, so he can't necessarily world hop like he used to be able to, but he can almost like hop onto DJ Mad's tailcoats and hop to the next world with him after a certain like delay of time or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
So obviously, if he's a king of this world, he's not going to want to leave that behind to go out by himself to get these, you know, this kid basically. So he's going to be sending assassins and things like that through after him.
Right.
So I could imagine him already in these crazy adventures and fighting or these creatures or saving villages or, you know, coming back and messing up things here and then having to figure out how to fix it. I can imagine all that being conflicting enough, and then randomly like some crazy assassin knight shows up that tries to like actually kill him on our Earth. I think that'd be pretty nuts, and like just piecing together the parts as it goes. Yeah, I think it sounds pretty intriguing right there. And then of course like being able to weaponize the sounds, you know, and like you said, like the Yu-Gi-Oh thing, like if he was able to build like I guess like it would be kind of funny because it could be like an armor type situation, but I imagine, like you said, him being kind of that Donald Glover type with like the faux hawk, or not faux hawk, but like a mohawk thing, and he has to leave his headphones on all the time, and when he goes to these places, he's got the backpack with the speakers on the sides of it. He's just like pretty much ready for any situation, but of course every situation he gets in is not what he expected because he's never been to these worlds.
Right.
You know, and I can almost imagine him being friends with that little alien from the first world and like taking him to some of these other worlds to help him on some of these adventures.
Oh, so kind of like a Pikachu.
Yeah. I actually thought of that
partner.
because you said Pokemon earlier. But, you know, I think it'd be cheesy if he was there all the time. But if it was just like, you know, like he realized that he has a home here and everything, but maybe he did have a family at one point and they all got killed by these knights on this different world. What did you say it was called? The first world?
I actually have not thought of a name for it.
Oh, I thought you said a name earlier. But yeah, like, let's say that this thing is really intelligent and these are actually like citizens of this kingdom who actually communicate and talk out loud to these knights, and maybe DJ Mad doesn't understand what he's saying, but there is a communication there, a language barrier. So they kind of find a mutual interest that, you know, this king may or may not have killed DJ Mad's dad, but he also took away this little guy's family. So they team up here and there depending on what the mission is.
I like that. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Like, yeah, kind of like it. Yeah, as I said, like kind of like Pikachu partner in a way.
Yeah, or maybe like we don't even get there right away. We just kind of like when DJ Mad is able to piece all these parts together and he thinks he's strong enough to finally go confront this king, he basically groups together some of the people that he's met through his adventures to help him. So he could get like that girl from the village and this little alien creature and, you know, maybe whatever else he meets along the way and actually go on there with like 5 or 6 different people or aliens or whatever that are going to help him out.
Right. And so, like, the other thing that I would like to do, because, I mean, like, I read quite a few comics and stuff like that, but what I think would be, it would be a little time-consuming, but I think it would be well worth it to do. But whenever you hear these noises that come from, like, his speaker and stuff like that, they actually create, like, a ripple effect, and I want each ripple to represent the animal that it came from. And so when he's battling, like when he's like fighting somebody, I want like obviously like he's going to be standing behind the shield, and he's going to be using like his mixer on his arm to like mix these sounds together to create. He's going to use these sounds together to make something new to like defeat people. And
so like he's almost like a sound chemist.
right. And so that's, you know, kind of the way that he fights is like, you know, that's kind of like what he does to fight. And but in the comic book, whenever he's using this power, I want each ripple to kind of like warp together, so you can actually like read the ripple effects and know like, oh, he's using this animal and he's using this animal. Like, I wonder how that's gonna turn out.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool.
So I think that's kind of like something a little bit unique. Like, I mean, like when you think about like Marvel characters and stuff like that, like the only one that's close to that is Doctor Strange, and more or less they're like kind of symbols. And I mean, but there's not like really like a catalog I don't know of like how to read the symbols that he actually makes to use like his powers.
Yeah, so I mean, that would be kind of interesting reading the book too, because you'd be sitting there like, dude, use this. Like, you met this thing, you know, a couple planets ago. Like, you could easily use this to defeat this alien or whatever. And like him not being smart enough to use it at first, obviously, because, you know, he's a superhero in training at that point. But yeah, I think it'd be really clever to do that, especially like in comic book form. Like, you could easily just do, you know, like a couple of those creatures like merging together, and then when it actually hits him, you know,
like it does something like really, really crazy.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, and that's, you know, like in my head, like that's the reason why I think he would fit so well into the Marvel universe is just, you know, the storyline. And like I just imagine it as like a really colorful kind of comic book. It's not really dark like DC. So I just think like Marvel has a lot of color, and you know, it just he himself would be an awesome character to fight alongside, like, you know, anybody that's actually in like not only the Avengers but even beyond that.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, well, especially traveling to different worlds and stuff, you know, he could run in all kinds of different things out there. Yeah, I think it's really clever. I think it's a really original idea, and it definitely has a lot of depth to it. I think, like, as far as his Earth situations go, I think it would be kind of interesting if there was like another DJ out there or another electronic artist that maybe at one time they were friends. Like, DJ Mad looked up to him. Then when DJ Mad starts becoming more popular, this guy gets jealous and wants to basically take him down. So he tries to like say that the noises are fake and like all these things, and basically making a media circus out of it. And it gets to the point, you know, where he ends up like trying to break into his apartment and figure out where he's getting these sounds from. And I can imagine them almost being like mortal enemies, kind of like his dad and this other guy that ended up becoming the king. Like, this is his situation that he's dealing with here in present time on Earth, is this pesky competition that he has to deal with this other DJ all the time. And they're not friends at all anymore. As it goes down, you know, maybe he starts getting close to figuring out what DJ Mad is actually up to. Maybe he breaks into his apartment or something, or finds the keys to his dad's warehouse and sees that he's been putting together this armor and stuff. And he's like, well, why would he need armor? What's he doing? But yeah, maybe make it so that is a huge conflict as the stories go. So, I mean, like, if this was like a movie for him, like, he would be the main villain of the first movie. And then, you know, the second movie would be kind of the arcing of this, you know, sneaky other DJ, where he's kind of coming around to realizing that there's a lot more in this world, or in all of these worlds, than just being famous and money and all these things that, you know, DJ Mad realized in the first movie, and kind of coming around to it in the third movie, where they actually team up together and travel to that first world to go take out this king and either save his dad or something, you know?
Right. I haven't thought about like I actually haven't thought about anybody really in like his real world like actually turning into a villain. So that's actually pretty clever.
Yeah, because I mean, if it was a comic book, like you gotta imagine, like it could go forever, and there could be so many different arcs and things that it could do that you would want to be very, I guess, large scale, like right off the bat. Like you'd want to know that there's problems in his personal life, that there's problems with his music career, there's problems with his record company coming down on him, there's competitions with other artists. Like that's just what's going on here. And then you introduce like a love life into it, and then it's a whole nother thing, but that could be something, maybe he falls for this girl that's from this village from a whole nother world. And that would be kind of interesting too, because I could almost imagine him bringing her back here at some point and showing her what he does here. And then that being kind of a conflicting thing where she's like, well, it's not right that you're exploiting these creatures this way. Mm-hmm. And kind of being like a humbling thing that kind of brings them back to, like I said earlier, the responsibility of what he's actually doing. He's literally just using this to be famous.
Right.
And that's kind of his drive. And that's why I say it's a very Tony Stark thing at first. And then maybe once he realizes that this first planet is just being held captive by this king, and he's trying to bounce around and take over other planets with his empire, and he has to take him down. That's the whole reason that he was given these abilities, is to help save the universe basically from this tyrant.
Actually, I like that. Like, and I think eventually, if the girl from the village does come back to this world, I think like maybe she would have like a really big problem with the way that he uses that, those sounds and stuff like that. But I think eventually like what warms her up to the fact that, he's not like, maybe there is a glimpse of an actual hero within him, is, like he actually has created this armor, and maybe he actually uses it to maybe help out somewhere in real life. He uses this to like save a whole bunch of people from, a disaster.
All right. Okay. So I think I got it. So just like every other superhero story, any other good superhero story, they completely give up at some point. So let's say that she talks to him about all this and they get in this huge fight, and in doing so, he realizes that what he's doing actually is wrong. So he literally gives it up. Like he takes everything to his dad's warehouse, buries it in there basically, so he's done with it. And he's like, I'm just going to do music the right way. And then he goes and makes up with her, and she's still mad at him, but of course she's like this is the right thing to do. And then at this time, all these elements are just closing in. Like this other DJ breaks into the warehouse because he sees him go there to put everything up. The king is sending the assassin after him, like all this stuff at the same time. So when the assassin comes down, he's like in the green room getting ready to play another set, and all of a sudden you just hear all this screaming and stuff, and he goes out there and everybody's running through the hallways and stuff, so he runs out to like the main floor of the club or whatever, and there's this like crazy assassin alien there that sees him, and he's just like mad or something, and like pulls out his like weapons and just comes after them, and he just starts attacking all these people. And then DJ Mad like looks at his girlfriend or whatever, and she's like, you have to do something, like you're the only one that can do something. Mm-hmm. And he like realizes that this is his calling, is it's instead of being famous and all that he needs to protect people. And maybe that is kind of the trigger that makes him realize that this guy is one of those knights from that first world he went to, that something happened there. He left something there that allowed them to follow him here. So he's got to kind of put the pieces together for that first before he actually figures out that there's like a main bad guy, basically.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's badass, dude.
Yeah, he's got to give it up, and then he's got to be like forced into it, but in doing so, realizing why he's doing it rather than being egotistical and being famous and money and all that.
Right.
And then it's got to be kind of one of the stories that in doing that, he also becomes famous because of it. He ends up like, going viral, like because it was a live stream event or something and the cameras were still rolling, even though everybody like was leaving or dead or whatever.
Yeah, maybe it's just like a cell phone that like, like somebody had dropped and it was just like still recording. But you just see all this like commotion from like up above, and it just as like the fight's happening, the camera or the phone just keeps on getting like thrown around.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And like I kind of imagine it, since he gave up all his weapons and his armor and all that, because I mean he was obviously using it like, on these other creatures on these other planets, so he wasn't really fighting, he was more just defending himself. So he would have these sounds in his mix already, so he would know how to defeat this assassin with these sounds. But of course he has to fight at the same time, so he's fighting this guy or this assassin, and he's like yelling things to his girlfriend who's up on the stage, like trying to put the certain records and stuff on this DJ set. They're like, he's like, oh, like that's not gonna work, like you have to like change the impedance on this speaker to this and this. And then she's like, what? I don't know what that means. He's like, just pull the cord out, like while he's fighting, and she's running around doing all this stuff, and then like hits the start button, and then it starts playing the beat or something funny, and they're like sitting down there fighting to some like cheesy techno beat, and he's like, not that one, like the other one. And then her finally getting it right, and then just like just disintegrating this assassin kind of thing, or sending him back to his own like world. And then her having that conversation with him, like that was a night from this and this, like they're gonna keep coming back.
Yeah, because the king has his tech already. Like, he's already kind of figured out how to send somebody back with him kind of thing.
Yeah, so instead of her, like, agreeing with what he's doing, it's more like you started this, like, you need to finish it, or you need to end it kind of thing. And doing so, he realizes the responsibility of the decisions that he's made.
That's pretty sweet, dude. Like, well, and I've actually thought of, like... I mean, like, I thought for, like, later on, because, I mean, obviously, like, Tony Stark gets, like, really cool stuff later on, but not at the beginning. But I kind of, like, wanted his arsenal, not just not just the shield, but I wanted him to, like, actually, like, upgrade, like, his shoes. So he not, like, he doesn't, like, quite have flight, but he has, like, the ability to, like, basically like boost him up to where like he can like jump up a building kind of thing.
Okay, so like anti-gravity boots almost.
Yeah, kind of thing. Just they use sound to like to like propel him kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So kind of like Spider-Man-ish in a way, not really, but like he's a little bit more destructive, I would think, than Spider-Man, because Spider-Man can like run up a like glass and stuff like that. Like, he would basically just be like blowing out the glass.
Yeah.
Because once he hits a building, he's gonna hit that sound again, and it's just gonna like blast that glass out of like nowhere.
Well, that's the fun part about comic books, is you could have like montage kind of things like that. So after he goes to like certain worlds, and like there could be parts where it's not like he instantly knows what he's gonna do with this new ability, because obviously some creatures defend themselves, some fight, some use it for food, or I don't know, mating rituals, whatever. So all these different sounds and these things that he's collecting are for different reasons, and maybe he doesn't always know what they are, so sometimes he gets back to his lab, his studio, and a lot of these things are just sitting in files on his computer or something, because he doesn't know what he can do with them yet.
Right.
Obviously, he needs to be able to defend himself with his shield, so maybe there's a creature that he fights or that he comes across that something else attacks it, and he sees that this thing uses sound waves through, like, maybe it's like a reverse horn, almost like a satellite dish kind of thing, where it uses that to repel dangerous creatures. Protect its family or something. So he uses that, and he goes through the process of building different types of armors and different reverse shields, and putting speakers inside of them to like change the frequency and the resonance of how it reverberates through it and stuff. So I can imagine a lot of it being trial and error, obviously. And, you know, being a comic, you could explore that literally forever with different things as he's dealing with the story.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, and that's, I think that that's kind of like the cool vision kind of like in my head, is that as it goes along, I want him to eventually become somebody that's as formidable as, like, you know, somebody of the Avengers. I haven't quite like tried to draw them out yet, but like later on, I kind of wanted him to have like what I called like a boom suit, where basically the suit that he actually like wears when he's like let's say he's a part of the Avengers at that point, the suit itself is actually like an entire speaker. And so he can actually like use the suit to fly through like the sound that comes out of it.
Yeah, it'd be cool if like nano speakers, almost like they're also tiny, but they produce like a big sound.
Yeah, and like slightly in a way, I mean, like I'm kind of a big fan of like Iron Man, but like I thought like how cool would it be to have like Iron Man like actually help him out with that?
Oh yeah, I could definitely see that.
But you know, that's all like later on. Like, I mean, like way later on, after he goes through like his trials and really setting the mark high, and then eventually it's high enough to where like the Avengers are even like, whoa, like we need this kid because he's way too powerful to not have on our team, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I could just imagine them like teaming up, and then one of them being like, "Yeah, we're not calling you DJ, like we'll just call you Matt."
That would be badass.
Yeah,
I think that's always kind of like been like my main goal, is like to create a character that's so popular that it actually fits into like the DC universe or the Marvel universe. Like, I mean, at that point, you're pretty much, that character's, you know, immortalized for forever within Marvel or whatever.
Well, it's funny you say Iron Man, because he has a lot of characteristics like that too, especially being a guy in a suit. You know, he's just a normal guy. Like, he doesn't have abilities himself. But you got to promise me one thing, though. Like, maybe later on, you know, something he can use against that, like, DJ that always tries to compete with him or something. But, like, him having some kind of, like, a brown note. And if you guys don't know what a brown note is, it's a note that makes you crap your pants. So, like, I could imagine him collecting a note or a sound like that, and he's just had it stored on his computer for, like, months. And he uses it like a alarm system, or like a security system almost, you know. So like when this DJ guy starts kind of getting close to figuring out who he is, you know, he like opens the door and like the speaker makes the brown note, and then he just like craps his pants, and he's like, oh, freaking DJ mad, like.
Or maybe he like makes like Tony Stark shit, like crap his pants or something
in his suit, like. It's like, you're lucky this thing has disposable like parts in it.
And Tony Stark's just holding like, you know, like Jarvis is like, we've never had to use this before, but.
Well, I think they said it in one of the movies that he has like a system, like if he goes to the bathroom in his suit, like it dispenses it for him or something. So that would be pretty funny if it was something like that. And then I could just imagine like DJ Mad being like, well, I hope you got a wiper in there. Like, that's great and all, you got the dispenser system, but you got a wiper in there.
Well, I mean, I think this was like a good opening to like this character, and obviously like we actually like went into a lot more, and you definitely helped me out with thinking a little bit further beyond in depth into the story too. But as I said, I do want to do some other episodes with this, and go over some more of the more technical side of like how the worlds actually work.
Yeah.
And then maybe like, you know, go into like my ideas with the tech that he does come up with, you know, eventually. Because I would like him to use sound as like almost like a time travel in a way. And I need help, you know, a lot of help figuring out time travel within sound, if that's even like a thing. But I mean, if Ant-Man can go through the quantum realm, then I'm sure that we can find something clever like that.
It's fictional, so I'm sure. But yeah, it'd be kind of cool if he ended up like going back and visiting his dad, like in his heyday, where he was all cocky and all that. You know, him being like, like trying to talk to him, you know, and then him just be like, here, carry this trumpet or whatever, like, you know, like just passing off stuff on him. Like, it's like, oh, you must be the new crew member or something, you know.
Right.
But yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'd like to do that for sure. But yeah, that's a pretty awesome idea. I think this is a really cool episode. Like, I would actually really love to see a movie version of it as well as read the comic book version.
Heck yeah. I would love to see a part of Marvel. Marvel, if you're listening, please,
yeah,
please hit me up and
Marvel,
let me know.
Marvel
yeah,
Studios.
hashtag Marvel. Hashtag like Marvel Universe. Well, all right. Well, I hope that everybody listening enjoys this episode, and I hope it does give you guys some stuff to think about, and maybe you guys are excited about this idea.
Yeah, let us know if you want some more.
Yeah, feel free to comment, and we'll probably be doing another one here pretty soon. Maybe not the next one, but, you know, here pretty soon.
Like, we'll definitely get to the part where we start doing sequels here pretty soon. So, but thank you guys so much for listening. Definitely like and subscribe and share these, and you know, help us reach our goals.
Definitely. All right, well, I'm Kurt,
and I'm Josh,
and this is Storytime Pitches.